Well, just when we thought the Nintendo Switch 2 game keycard controversy couldn't get any worse, it did. And this time, it's not about money. It's not about greedy publishers trying to save a buck on cartridges. It's about something way bigger and way scarier. We're talking technical limitations. Yeah, turns out these shiny little cartridges Nintendo's so proud of, they're not just expensive, they're also too slow to keep up with modern gaming. And if that doesn't sound like a major red flag for the Switch 2's physical media future, I don't know what does. So let's rewind. This whole conversation blew up because of Ubisoft and Star Wars Outlaws. Now, Outlaws is a monster of a game. Big open world, ray tracing, designed from the ground up for SSDs on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. And somehow, they actually got it running on the Switch 2. On paper, that's insanely impressive. But here's the kicker. When asked why it's shipping as a game keycard instead of a full cartridge, Ubisoft didn't say, the cart costs too much. No, Rob Banton, an audio architect for the Snowdrop engine, explained the real issue. Switch 2 cartridges just aren't fast enough. Snowdrop relies on heavy disk streaming to load those big open-world assets on the fly. On PS5, no problem. That SSD screams at 5.5 gigabits per sec. On Xbox Series, still fine, around 2 gigabits per sec. On PC, you just throw in a decent NVMe drive and you're good. But the Switch 2, cartridges are crawling along at around 400 megabytes per second. That's 1/5 the speed of the Switch 2's own internal storage. And in today's game design landscape, that's a deal breaker. So yeah, it's not cost-cutting this time, it's physics. Now, we already had hints of this. Benchmarks showed Mario Kart loads way faster off the SSD compared to the cartridge, 16 seconds on internal storage versus 24 seconds on cart. That's an 8-second gap, and while that might not sound like a big deal at first, when you're talking about SSD pipelines designed for instant streaming, it's massive. And here's the thing. 400 megabytes per second might have sounded fine a generation ago, but today, that's ancient. Heck, even a decent microSD express card hits 800 to 900 megabytes per second. Switch 2's internal SSD, around 2 giga per second. And then the big boys, Xbox at 2.4, PS5 at a blistering 5.5. So if you're Ubisoft and you're building Star Wars Outlaws around those higher SSD speeds, you can maybe work with Switch 2's internal 2 gigabytes S. But a cartridge at 400? Forget it. The game literally cannot stream assets fast enough to run. And this isn't just Ubisoft. Look at Call of Duty. On PS5 and Xbox, you buy a Blu-ray, pop it in, and what happens? You don't actually play off the disc, you install. And those installs are huge. We're talking 100, 120, sometimes even 200 gigabytes. The disc is basically just a glorified installer and authentication tool at this point. Same with Cyberpunk 2077. On console, you still install the game. But CD Projekt Red proved something important with Cyberpunk's next-gen patch. If you put in the work to optimize for SSDs, players will notice, and they'll reward you. Meanwhile, Nintendo's solution? Game keycards, which put preservation and ownership at risk. If anything, these examples show us the direction the industry has already taken. Physical media is no longer the thing you run your games from. It's just how you install them. And that might be where Switch 2 has to go if they don't want to kill physical entirely. And honestly, none of this should surprise us. Nintendo has a long history of storage and media limitations. Back in the N64 days, cartridges were tiny compared to PlayStation CDs. That's why so many multiplats skipped N64 or came with cut content. On DS and 3DS, publishers constantly complained about cart sizes. Remember how some big games had to release on multiple cards or force partial downloads? Same issue. Even the Wii U had proprietary discs that couldn't hold as much as Blu-ray, which held back certain ports. So now here we are again in 2025, and Nintendo's latest physical media format is once again bottlenecking the experience. History doesn't repeat itself, but with Nintendo, it sure does rhyme. And here's where this gets ugly for gamers. If third parties can't ship full games on cartridges because of speed limitations, then we're going to see more and more of these dreaded game keycards. And once again, that means you don't own the game. You own a piece of plastic that points to a server. And when that server goes down, congratulations, you own nothing. Think about all those Wii and Wii U games that required online updates to function. Today, they're already incomplete. Same with the 3DS and its eShop shutdown. And now we're staring down the barrel of that exact same problem on Switch 2, but baked directly into the physical format itself. So what's the solution? Well, here's an idea. Nintendo could shift physical to work more like PlayStation and Xbox. You buy a cartridge, it contains the full game, and when you pop it in, it installs to the SSD. You don't run off the cart, you just use it to transfer the data. Yes, that means waiting around 10 or 15 minutes for installs. Yes, it means using up your precious internal storage, but at least the data is preserved on the cartridge. At least you don't need a server. That's still physical ownership. And honestly, that would be so much better than game key cards, because right now, game key cards guarantee that one day, all of those games will just vanish. The scary part is this. Ubisoft's little comet might just be the tip of the iceberg. If Snowdrop couldn't make cartridges work, what happens with Unreal Engine 5 games? What happens with other massive asset streaming open-world titles? Do they all just default to game key cards? Do they abandon physical altogether? Or does Nintendo quietly roll out faster cartridges mid-generation to fix the issue? We don't know. What we do know is that once again, Nintendo has created a console that feels a step behind the times. First, it was power. Now it's storage speed. And third-party developers are the ones paying the price. So yeah, this whole situation just got way more complicated. It's not about greedy publishers anymore. It's not about the cost of 64GB cartridges. It's about the cartridges themselves being too slow for modern game design. And that should scare anyone who cares about game preservation, physical media, or even just owning what you buy. But now I want to hear from you. Would you accept install from cart as a solution? Or are you done with physical entirely if it can't keep up? And how do you feel about Ubisoft basically admitting that game keycards are sometimes the only option? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. This is going to be a heated one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.